I'd like to introduce myself and my 3-year-old daughter who's homesick today, so I apologize if you hear a little voice in the background. My name is Megan Rose. I'm the General Counsel and Director of Social Impact Initiatives and Housing Policy for Leading Age California. I was on the Housing for All Ages and Stages writing team as part of the development for the Master Plan for Aging. And so I am here as the kind of Master Plan for Aging expert. And Jamie, who you saw who had to jump out, is here from Contra Costa County, and she can introduce herself more completely when she gets back. But I wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items. So over the next 25 minutes, we hope to identify 3 areas of focus for the next year. So this is a big, bold goal area that covers housing, transportation, climate change, parks, and emergency response and management. So we're trying to narrow it down to 3 focus areas that the county can focus on over the next year, where all community members, you can create a place where all community members can live and age with dignity and support in their setting of choice. So please do not think about barriers or funding. Think about what it looks like for Contra Costans to have everything that they need. We recognize that there will be more than 3 initiatives to get there, but knowing that this is a 10-year plan and the work will build throughout the years. So let's talk about where we start with these 3 bold goals. So in just 25 minutes, we recognize that we can't cover everything very deeply. So we ask that you write all of your comments in the chat to facilitate the conversation and capture all of your great thinking. You can raise your hand if you'd like to speak. But please do use the chat to share your thoughts so that we can ensure that we are recording everything. And if you are not speaking, we ask that you keep muted so that we can hear the people who are. And I'll turn it over to Jamie.
So I'll just give you a little bit of data and context for older adults experiencing homelessness in the county, so you have some context for that. So I have a little bit of data, and then I actually wanted to show you, we did an analysis of everyone that's in our homeless system of care and what the needs are and where the gaps are. So let me just, I'll verbally give you some information, and then I'll show you a diagram real quick. So big picture, if we look at everyone that accessed homeless services, we're looking really at 2019. This is probably gonna look different in a year, but this is the data that we have for from our annual report. 9% of people that were accessing homeless services in Contra Costa in 2019 were seniors. So we basically say 62 and over. But what's really important to know is if we looked at a 3-year trend from 2017 to 2019, seniors had the greatest increase. So it increased by 35%. So basically in that population, there was a 35% increase in the number of people in that age group that were accessing homeless services. The other thing I'll add is there's a couple of different housing types, and the type of housing with the most supportive services and funding is called permanent supportive housing. And I just want to show you real quick. We did a quick analysis of like the types of housing and what we have and what we need. And so this exits is housing type. So rapid rehousing is for people that are experiencing homelessness and only need temporary support services and funding, but they can eventually fly on their own. So they can either increase their income or they don't need extra services. And so the gap for that is about 870 units per year. Permanent supportive housing is, as I said, the most resource intensive, and this is often for folks, you have to have a disability. It's long-term rental supports and services. And so for older adults, this may often end up being the type of program that they need. This is, there's a big gap. So this is a very big need. We need about 1,200 more units of this per year to meet the needs. And vouchers is just rental support with no support services, ongoing rental support. So like a housing choice voucher, Section 8. So about 822 units. And so the other piece I wanted to show you is we actually did an analysis about the kind of cost, what it would cost. So if you look at PSH, we would need about $29 million a year to close that gap. So with that, it sounds like, Fran, you had a comment or question?
I had a comment. and I wanted to talk about transportation because Debbie's made the big point that it was all left out of the master plan. These are comments that were sent to me by Sarah Cleveland, who's a member of the Richmond Commission on Aging. And I don't want to talk about the problems with transportation, but she had some ideas. If I were designing a transportation system for seniors, I would want it to offer portal-to-portal transportation, which was safe, clean, and affordable. I will put these in the chat. I would advertise it widely and may even send mailings to every household in the area to be served. I would have telephone numbers posted so that people could call to be told how to access rides with cell phones, computers in different languages for the neighborhood, to be able to book rides for those who do not have computers or cell phones, and training would be culturally relevant. I just want to get those in before we really get back to housing, and I'll put them in the chat. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Barbara Bennett, go ahead.
I am a single parent, 5 children I raised and worked all my life. So the problem with the housing goes back to the discrimination against age. And so I'm 90 years old. I've still worked. I worked last year at Christmas time for the just a gift shop, and it was partial. And thank God that gave me enough income to be receive unemployment insurance. Otherwise, I would have to be out of my apartment. So that's an issue that really needs to be given. I also am a member of Brave Panthers, and that organization is nationwide, and we are doing everything we can every day of our life to get that age problem with working conditions that is so unfair. And it's for veterans, it's for men also, and that's where it has to start. So we don't, you know, we couldn't make unemployment insurance. I have $2,000 because I worked all my life, but that's not enough with the increases of rent and no job. And so that's where it starts for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who else has, oh, Myrtle?
Thank you. I'm concerned about the homeless, as they like to be called, houses. They don't have places to stay. And it looks like every plan that we formulate does not include them. And there's a lot of seniors that are out on the street because of the fact, as the previous speaker said, if you retired years ago, your income is very low and the cost of housing is very high. It bothers me. I'm the chairperson of the Richmond Commission on Aging. The fact is, I drive around Richmond and there's all these vacant buildings. So if some of the funding could be used to make these into, I forgot what they call them, where you have one room in hotels. And there are a lot of hotels too that we actually could, I think the county wanted to buy one in Richmond and had all this pushback. So I wanted to suggest too that when you want to open up a care home for children, the cities cannot keep you from doing it if you have no more than 6 kids. So we need something like that because neighborhoods are going to always complain. They don't wait to see if it's going to be a problem, but they always complain, and they have to keep, moving homeless people around. So if we could consider something like that, so that for the seniors that we have for the children, that you could open up homes where if you don't have more than 6 people, the city can't stop you from doing it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Myrtle. I think Michelle was next.
I am lucky or blessed to live in a affordable or low income housing or whatever. And I'm curious to know what is the calculation used to determine affordable housing? Because it seems like all property should have something that's affordable for everybody. And what do you call it? The determination of low income is off kilter because
it's so
I know that people who are working and not able to afford the rent. Everybody is one paycheck away from being homeless or unhoused.
I'm really glad you brought this up, because one of the things that we see in homeless services is, as you said, you know, what does it mean to be low income? And that sort of band is really broad. And for us, most people experiencing homelessness are in what's the very low or extremely low income. And there's very few units that are set aside for that income level. It's usually sort of higher, you know, within low income, higher brackets. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I know it's kind of, people are raising their hand, it's getting out of order. I think, Marianne, you've been waiting for a while. And just a reminder too, you can also put your comments into the chat.
Thank you. I will put some comments in the chat as well. But my name is Marianne Iverson, and I'm the Director of Teens and Adult Services for the Down Syndrome Connection of the Bay Area. And I'm here just representing the intellectual and developmental disability disabled adults. They are struggling with housing issues. If they are showing signs of any kind of dementia, nursing home and skilled nursing homes will kick them out, if you will, and going home with often aging adult parents. So it's kind of a double whammy. We really need to see some kind of possible group home settings, things that are more appropriate, and it can be definitely integrated with the general population. But I will add some more comments in there because I know everybody's got their hands raised, but thank you.
Great. Thank you
One thing
so
I
much.
wanted to add in there that our analysis didn't show was about board and cares. And that's a real intense need in our community, as you said, for folks that are maybe struggling with dementia, but also maybe can't take care of their activities of daily living. Permanent supportive housing is not a good fit for this. So there is this whole other gap that we didn't even capture.
Okay, so just to kind of give a little recap of where we're at so far, we've talked about the need for more affordable housing, particularly permanent supportive housing, and particularly for those with extremely low income and very low income. So kind of moving away from the low income housing tax credit model that really focuses on more of a moderate income household, and the need for those deeper subsidized housing units. And then also about other housing types, including shared housing, board and care housing, places where seniors and other persons with disabilities can have access to the services they need to age in place. So let's move on to Pamela. You've had your hand up.
I'm a member of the Contra Costa Developmental Disability Council and the parent of a 43-year-old daughter with developmental disabilities. One comment I'd just like to make, which it seems like a very obvious one, but the disabled come in all sizes and shapes as well as ages. And so transportation, parks, any of the subjects that we talk about are, we are included in that community. And unlike what many believe, services are not necessarily provided by a regional center system. It's the generic services. So we are amongst the homeless, we're amongst the many cultures, the many people who need language help. So that the important thing is to include us at the table to get a different flavor, but it's our function, our functional level that really needs to be taken into consideration, not the medical diagnosis. What I specifically wanted to point out, though, is not only do we have a fairly successful model of board care group homes in the disability community that's one model, but I think it's also important to note that most disabled are living at home with family, and the important thing, just like anybody else, is they want to be out of an institution, out of necessarily in a nursing home, which may not be appropriate at all, and live in their own home. So that means caregiving. And one of the things that we work very hard on at the Disability Council is working on legislation to try to improve caregiving skills and caregiving income as well. So one of the things we keep looking at is the bill to set up a certification for caregiving. So thank you.
And so I know there was a woman who spoke earlier about transportation, and she said she was going to put her comments in the chat. So if you have a chance to do that, that would be great, because I want to just remind everyone that while we did identify in the master plan for aging, housing is the #1 goal, because we feel like housing is essential to human life, like food and water, that you should have shelter or housing. And then we kind of added these other groups that we felt were also important. And I would really like us to talk about some of those too: transportation, climate change, parks and open spaces, emergency management. Does anybody have any thoughts on any of those other categories?
I just put a little note in there, but I don't know if anybody saw it. What my comment is just a general let's call it general. And that's, there are too many transportation agencies in Contra Costa County. Who do you contact when you're looking for a specific kind of service? Very confusing. So I would recommend that we need, at least initially, to focus on accessible transportation for our disabled and our aging populations. That's, somehow get these organizations to get their, services defined so that you put the emphasis on those people that really need those services. And so that would be my comment on it, but we've got too many to begin with.
And one thing to add on that, just from the homeless services perspective, is when most people, when they're getting housed, especially if they're getting housed in East County where it's more affordable, the transit system is, as you said, very fragmented and not necessarily going to be near where people are. So this is actually a really big issue for our population, just in homeless services once they're getting housed.
Yes.
All right, John, I think you've had your hand up. It's good to see you again, John. John helped answer a lot of questions that we had when we were writing the master plan for aging.
Hi, Megan. Yeah, good to see you again as well. Yeah, I hesitated to jump in here with the transportation information that I have because there were so many good, accurate comments in the chat. But just to underscore those comments, yes, the county has recently completed an accessible transportation strategic plan, and we're now moving into implementation. And I was just typing in the chat the website where people can go to sign up to be notified on activities. And so there are a number of things that the implementation is going to cover, but I'll be very brief and hit just a couple of the top two. The first one is that we need a sort of a persistent coordinating entity. And this implementation phase, we're going to define what that entity is. And entity is sort of an ambiguous word. So it could be an existing government agency, it could be a new nonprofit, it could be an existing nonprofit. So that's one implementation task. And then the other one is to identify a new revenue stream, which is a big lift. It's a tricky thing to do, but that is one of the main goals. So we are trying to move into implementation with our local plan. And as I think somebody said earlier, the state master plan relative to transportation was a significant disappointment. So I'm trying to focus very much on our local activities, but I'll put that information in the chat right now.
Great, thank you. Gabriella.
So I had a just quick comment in terms of, and I know we're about out of time, in terms of shared housing. We run a shared housing program, and I think there needs to be a big educational push for people to really understand what shared housing is. I think, you know, we have been doing some campaigns around it. We're trying to bring shared housing to the area, but I think there just needs to be a bigger push almost at the state level of what shared housing is and the many benefits of it. And I think it really does tie into emergency preparedness, because we've had applicants come to our program, home providers, who are alone and who are nervous, or, you know, who are talking about how, hey, if we have to evacuate because there's a fire, I can't do it on my own. So having a housemate could assist with that. So I think, you know, shared housing, tying that into the affordable housing, but also just emergency preparedness. And then I just want to say, Barbara Bennett, I completely agree with you. when talking about discrimination against age for employment, we've had a lot of individuals apply to our program coming into home sharing that have been are looking for a part-time job because they cannot pay, for their rent or their housing on SSI, and they've been discriminated against, and it's been very hard for them to find a part-time or full-time employment. So thank you.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much, because I also have a challenged son that has been with me for 63 years, and he had to go into a retirement home because my family felt that, I'm going to pass on soon, and then he wouldn't know how to be able to take care of himself. So it's a double whammy, things that you don't even expect in your life that you're growing into as you get older. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 minutes left. Mary, so we'll have a comment from you real quick, and then we'll go over our top 3. Thanks. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, so I'm really supportive of doing whatever can be done in the way of improving housing for homeless. So I'm hopeful that that will be, of course, one of the main goals, but I equally would like to see accessible transportation be one of the 3 main goals, because we've devoted a year to developing this strategic plan, and it was essentially left out of the master plan for aging. So I just wanted to make that voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you all. So to kind of go over the 3 big goals, I'm trying to combine all of the comments into the 3 buckets. The first is build more affordable housing for older adults and people with disabilities, especially permanent supportive housing, and particularly for ELI, VLI households. The second is Contra Costa needs more supply of alternative housing types, including group homes, shared housing, ADUs, and board and cares. And the third is transportation in the county needs to be accessible. It needs to have one coordinating entity. There are too many operators, and it's really confusing to utilize.
And I think this issue about employment and sort of income sources ties in with that affordable housing. Okay, so we have affordable housing, needs for more variety of housing with supportive services. Is that right? Well, not necessarily with supportive services, but I heard this is shared housing, board and cares. Okay.
Yeah, we had shared housing, board and care, group home, ADUs were the 4 mentioned.
Great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. I received a note that looked like we're going to be called back into the main room at 11:05.
We have 10 seconds. They're going to dump us.
Okay.
It's counting down on my screen.
Thank you, everyone, for your help, and we'll see you in the main room.